Hello fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and today I'd like to chat with you about all of the books that I read in the month of May. I swear it will be a miracle if I ever film a monthly wrap-up on time. I don't know, I feel like I just like to digest these books a little bit before discussing them with you. Anyway, I am surprised that I did read so much in the month of May. I started a second job on May 1st, and I've been working 6 days a week, yet somehow this has been my best reading month in a long time. I do not know how that works. I don't think it'll work the same way for the month of June, but I'm rather pleased with the books I've read in May, so let's just delve right into them. The first book I finished in the month of May was The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. This book takes place in a 15th century town in England and is a bit of a whodunit murder mystery of sorts. The wealthiest, most industrious man in the village, Thomas Newman, has been drowned and swept away by the river, and the whole town is in a buzz as to whether this was an accident, a suicide, a murder, and the local priest is tasked by his superior, the dean, to figure out exactly what has happened. The whole story is told through the lens of this local village priest, John Reeve, or Rev. For some reason in my head I kept saying Rev as in Reverend, which is not quite how this works. It's R-E-V-E, so it's probably Reeve. Anyway, the priest takes confession from the different town members, and that's how the story is told. The author does a wonderful job of conveying a sense of community in this village and provides a deep and nuanced view of the relationships between various locals as well as between the locals and the priest himself. But this story is rather unconventionally told. It was told in reverse, in fact. So it starts 4 days after the body was found and works backwards from there. I enjoyed the characterization and the prose in this book, but as a whole I found it altogether underwhelming and rather confusing. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention while I was reading. Maybe it was just the wrong book at the wrong time, but I just could not follow this reverse timeline. I felt like the book wanted me to do too many mental gymnastics. I finished the book and I immediately felt like I needed to reread it to actually figure out what happened. To me, that is not the mark of a good book. A good book should make you want to reread it because you loved it so much and you can't wait to delve back into the world and the emotions that it created for you. Not because you couldn't actually figure out what happened the first time. So no, I didn't actually reread it. I'm still not quite sure as to exactly what the ending was all about, and I don't think I will be rereading this one. It's fun when a book plays with form and tries something new, and I will give Samantha Harvey a lot of credit for trying something new. But it ended up feeling really inaccessible and just not working for me. That being said, a lot of other people really did like this book, and it did work for them. Maybe they were more in sync with what Samantha Harvey was trying to do and just kind of understood it better. But for me, it was just a rather confusing book to read. So the next book I finished in the month of May was I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. This book is a book I've been meaning to read for a long time, and I really did enjoy it. It's about 17-year-old Cassandra Mortmont and her family living in a crumbling castle in genteel poverty in the English countryside. Through Cassandra's notebook that she keeps, we learn all about her eccentric family. Her father, the literary genius who suffers from writer's block, her stepmother, Topaz, an artist's model who enjoys communing with nature in nothing but her boots, and her somewhat pretentious older sister, Rose. But everything changes when the family meets their new landlords, the Cotton Brothers. This was such a quirky and charming book with a really vivacious and readable writing style. There's actually a quote on the cover of my book that I'd like to read to you by J.K. Rowling. This book has one of the most charismatic narrators I've ever met. And that's so true. Cassandra is just such a captivating narrator for this book. And it has this iconic first line that gives you just a little taste of the book. It starts, "I write this sitting at the kitchen sink." Who writes sitting at a kitchen sink? Cassandra, that's who. She's such a quirky and interesting character to learn about, and I highly recommend reading this book just for her and her writing style. Everything about this book was absolutely perfect until the ending. I did not care for the ending at all. Not only did what I want to happen not happen, but I felt that it was rather abrupt for an ending and rather contrived as well. he didn't seem to be a fitting ending for how excellent the rest of the book was, and unfortunately it clouds my love for this book. But even without my approval of the plot, the characterization was just so rich and vivid that this book remains with me and is certainly worth a read. I do have a question for you guys though, and that is, was the book We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson based on this book? I think someone said that to me once, and if it's true, it makes a lot of sense, and I really was thinking a lot about my experience reading We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson while I was reading this book. Both of them feature quirky, eccentric families and focus on the relationship between two sisters. They feature ruined homes and this thread of profound isolation from society and the world around you. So yeah, I'm curious to know if you guys have heard of the connection between those two books, and yeah, I would like to learn more about that. This month, I also read Marvel 1602 by Neil Gaiman. This is the perfect set of comics for fans of both Marvel Universe and historical fiction. What if the Marvel heroes and villains we know and love were reimagined in the context of 1602 Elizabethan England? Well, that's basically the gist of this, and it is fascinating in so many ways. Neil Gaiman is a true artist when it comes to the graphic novel, and though he writes plenty of other genres, I think his graphic novels are where he really shines. So it's 1602, and Queen Elizabeth is sickly, and she fears the strange weather and bizarre phenomena that have been happening around England. The church claims heretics or witch breed, aka mutants, are responsible for these phenomena, and the head of the Queen's intelligence fears an assassination attempt from Count Von Doom. It's so fun to see how the Marvel characters you know and love fulfill their 17th century roles. Nick Fury is head of Queen Elizabeth's intelligence organization, and Stephen Strange is her court physician/magician. These characters' roles are explicitly stated on the first few pages, but I don't want to give away how the other characters are situated in the time period, because that's really part of the fun of reading this book. Some of the characters' names are even altered slightly so you don't realize who they are at first. Within the Marvel Universe, one of the main themes and threads is magic and sorcery versus technology and science, and Neil Gaiman takes this existing tension within the Marvel Universe and lets it play out in a time period with similar tensions. The subject matter naturally fits within the English politics of the time, the Spanish Inquisition, and the emergence of the New World. The established Marvel characters and the historical context play off each other beautifully, and Gaiman makes some fascinating parallels that both add depth to our understanding of the Marvel Universe and our perspective of the time period itself. So I highly, highly recommend this one, like I said, for Marvel fans and historical fiction fans alike. And this month I also finished Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I'm doing a reread of Harry Potter. For those of you who aren't aware, I've been listening to them on audiobook on my way to work. I don't really want to talk about this too much because I think I will be doing sort of a I finished rereading the Harry Potter series video at some point when I do finish it. But I really was shocked at how the pacing was so strange in the Order of the Phoenix. I didn't remember that. There was actually a ton of time that passed before school started, and I just never realized that that was the case. But yes, and I love Nymphadora Tonks. So anyway, more on Harry Potter in another video, I am sure, in the near future. It takes place in 1859 and is about Merrick Tremaine, who used to work for the East India Company and is stuck at home in Cornwall after sustaining an injury to his leg. But there is absolutely nothing for him in Cornwall. His brother has threatened him with being sent to an asylum or taking up a position as a parson, neither of which he is thrilled about doing. And then the India office comes to recruit him for what sounds like a suicide mission. He must go to Peru and smuggle samples of a special type of tree that can produce a higher yield of quinine, the treatment for malaria, which is plaguing the British in India. Everyone who has previously attempted this mission has died, and Merrick still has a limp. He has nothing to live for in England, though, so against his better judgment, he heads off to Peru, where he meets Raphael, a priest who is at the center of all of these stories and rumors of disappearances and cursed woods and living stone statues. What is real, what is a myth, and can Merrick obtain the quinine trees without getting killed? Where do I start? This book is absolutely brilliant. It has complex characters, an engaging plot, a bit of whimsy, it's part historical fiction, it's part magical realism, and it is just so delightful. The book has themes of friendship and love and duty, and it portrays a fascinating clash of cultures, religion, and class that all comes along with the notion of the British Empire and colonialization. Within this book, there's the English, the Spanish, and the natives of Peru, and it is so interesting to see how they all relate to each other and view each other. And this book is also a fascinating look at disability in the Victorian period. I do not want to give too much away about the book, but Merrick does suffer from his debilitating leg injury, and he ends up in a hospital colony in Peru of people almost exclusively with disabilities. And there's a profound look at disability's relationship to religion and God within this book. I think that I like this more than The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, like I said, but that's because I knew a little bit more of what to expect. Natasha Pulley's writing is so dense in ways that contemporary writing usually isn't. It's very Dickensian and generally reminiscent of 19th century fiction in that the sentences seem longer and more descriptive somehow and wordier. I struggled with this in The Watchmaker of Filigree Street and I had to read it very slowly, but in this book it just worked for me. Everything just clicked and it's just beautifully written. And it's also kind of fun that one of the main characters from The Watchmaker of Filigree Street knew Merrick and actually crops up in bits of this book. And so in reading this book, we come to learn a little more of that really interesting character. Natasha Pulley has a third book coming out in March 2020 that's supposed to be a sequel to The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, and I cannot wait. I hope it's actually kind of a loose sequel and just has some overlapping characters, but we shall see. I am so excited for it. And last but not least, this May I gave in to the BookTube hype and listened to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid on audiobook. This book blew me away. I don't think I actually would have enjoyed it had I read it in print form, but it was such a beautiful audiobook. I think it may have been too trite on the page, but this full cast audiobook was just meant to be spoken. It was absolutely brilliant. This, if you have not heard about it yet, has been going around BookTube. It's getting very popular. It's a documentary of a fictional band in the 60s and 70s. It's very sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It is hard to believe that this was not a real band. Yes, it's loosely based off of Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks, but the characters are all their own, and their trajectories take very different turns from Fleetwood Mac's band members. Trust me, I looked it up. The characters and their relationships just feel so real. Within the first half hour, I found myself inexplicably caring about these characters. They have this magnetic energy that makes you want to know what happens to them and makes them feel like a real band and real people. And I found myself falling in love with their music based on the descriptions of their music alone. And of course, their songs don't exist apart from select lyrics and song titles that Taylor Jenkins Reid has made up. In fact, my audiobook version said at the very end that they were going to play one of the songs featured in the book, and I just got so excited. They announced the music by this person, lyrics by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I was thrilled. And then I was listening, and there were just no words, and I was profoundly disappointed. It's almost as if not being able to hear their songs makes you appreciate them even more. I also really appreciated the feminist bent to the story. Each of the female characters in this book at some point faced sexism within the industry and had to face and overcome it in their own ways. They each managed to carve their own desires amidst the male-dominated space and industry, and even within their personal lives. It was refreshing to hear them discuss that aspect of their experiences. I was a little thrown off by the ending in some ways, but after thinking about it for a long time, it really worked for me. This book was all about the band and about fame and famous people, but in another way, it's all about the people who made that band famous and who influenced that band and those people. And there's something to be said for the ordinary behind what is seen as extraordinary. And to me, that was more meaningful in some ways than just a soap opera-like version of a band's history. So this book will stick with me, I think, for a long time. I'm trying to convince my fiance to read it on audiobook to listen to it because I was just talking about it so much while listening to it myself that it even got him excited about it. He's a big music fan, knows a lot about music, and I think that would really appeal to him. So yes, I highly recommend this book. I know there's so much hype surrounding it, but the audiobook, at least for me, was worth that hype. So that is all I read in the month of May. So far, the month of June has not been filled with all that much reading. I started Lucy Worsley's biography of Queen Victoria, which has been amazing, but unfinished as of yet. And I filmed for Jane Austen July, of course. I filmed an announcement video that you guys maybe seen, maybe not seen. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But the point of me saying that is, instead of reading, I've been watching all of the Jane Austen things that I've been recommending. I finished that video, and I started on a binge-watching spree of all of these Jane Austen-related movies and TV shows, and yeah, there's just so much love for Jane Austen coming your way soon. So yes, what have you guys been reading in the month of May or the month of June so far? If you guys want to talk about that in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Do you agree? Do you disagree with my thoughts? I'd love to hear in the comments down below. And until next time, I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!